How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Jermaine, I think one of the biggest questions leading off is just where do you feel like you need to grow, should grow in year two?
Just maturing as being a professional and, just continuing to get better every day and coming up with better habits and, just continuing to be consistent.
What did you learn from last year? I know there were a lot of ups and downs for you. What did you take away from how you can be better?
Just being consistent. I feel like that's the number one thing. No matter what you're doing in the professional job that you are doing, I just feel like being consistent is the number one thing. And, I feel like that's one thing I lacked last year.
Jermaine, would you say that one way to impress the coaches and your teammates is to start showing early on that you're changed, you're improving?
Yeah, 100%. So, like I said, that kind of goes in with coming up with better habits, a better routine with being at the facility, better rehab habits, and just better overall ways to become a better player, whether that's just going over the plays, working on your body, hydrating, and, all that sorts of things.
Is there a wake-up?
You look back at last year, there were times where, you had said, I'm trying to do this. What do you feel like was the turning point or maybe like the click that you needed for it to actually do something where it wasn't just where you may have changed your habits and you've been able to sustain what you've been trying to do?
I would say the offseason, having a lot of time off and, a lot of time to come up with different routines and different habits and, different ways to just, it's pretty much just going to the other things like I was just saying earlier.
Who's been a mentor for you, Jermaine, even last year, just to say, all right, let's get things going the right direction and kind of encouraging you to be better as a man and as a football player?
Chase and T have really done a real good job, helping me in and out of the facility and, talking with me, coming up with better ways and, listening to some of their habits and ways that they stay consistent and, just better overall connection with my teammates.
What's the best advice you've gotten?
I don't really want to talk about the best advice, but I will just say consistency has a lot to do with it.
Are you excited to kind of prove that you are the guy that the Bengals drafted still this year?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
How difficult was that for you when the team decided to not bring you to that final game of the season?
Nobody should be happy with it. And, I was very disappointed. But, it's something that I moved on from and, grew from and, can't wait. Really looking forward to this year.
How much time did you take, Jermaine, this offseason so far to think about yourself, your future, and your dedication to what you want your career to be in the NFL?
Day in and day out, sleepless nights, honestly. Just sitting there thinking. I could sit there and just think about football all night. And, it's just something that I love and, something that I really, enjoy doing. So I want to do the best that I can to, be the better player I can be.
Do you think the Bengals are giving you a second chance?
I won't look at it like a, chance. I just look at it, they're, my coaches and they really believe in me. So.
How important of an offseason is this for you, just to establish the routine and everything that we've heard that you've done?
I'm sorry?
How important of an offseason is this for you to establish a routine and get into the groove before an NFL season, because obviously it's a grind?
Yeah, it's very important. As a team, we have one goal. We really want to win a Super Bowl. So, everybody in this locker room has worked their ass off season, and to become the best player that they can be, and better habits and better routines for everybody. And it's all about just falling in line with it. Everybody being on the same page.
What do you think the biggest difference is with you now versus where you were a year ago when you're going through your first offseason program?
I say routine, coming up to the facility, doing different things on your off time, whether it could be something little, but, as long as I feel like you just continue to do something, staying in the playbook, talking over things with your teammates, the coaches, I feel like it just overall puts you in a better headspace.
You're talking about routine and consistency. If you follow all of those things, what's your ceiling, you think, this season?
Whatever God allows it to be, but, I just know one thing, I'm not going to stop grinding, and, so I'm looking forward to this year.
Is there someone helping you through this in terms of staying on your schedule, whether it be on a daily basis or, in the off season? Is there someone specifically that's helping you that you're really leaning on, or is it just something that one day you woke up and you were like, I want to change the way I'm going about this?
I wouldn't say, like daily, but, like I said before, I feel like this off season, and even going into this, going into what we're doing now. Chase and Tia are doing a really good job of being my mentors of, advice and, just in many different ways, So I really appreciate those guys and, many other guys around the locker room as well. BJ Hill, it's one of the guys I talk with a lot, joke around with a lot all day. And, he knows my potential and, I look at him as like a mentor as well. So, but I can name countless guys in here, that's a really good support for me. So,
Do you think
yeah, me and Joe have a really, funny relationship. He's a real funny dude, and I just really can't wait to this year. So.
You smile, you laugh. Does he keep you loose? Is that a big deal for after going through the kind of year you went through last year? He's giving you a fresh start and keeping you loose.
Yeah, whether we're just talking football, talking life or talking anything like that, he's always a good person to talk to, and I feel like he's also doing a real good job of being a mentor as well.
Do you think Jamar and
Why didn't you travel for the last game last year?
Huh?
What was the reason given for why you didn't travel for the last game last year? We haven't talked about something.
Yeah.
Was it a legal thing or was it just? Was it on field or off field? Are you able to say that?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
How much was that kind of the biggest wake-up call for you? Maybe not going on that, having that conversation is going to be traveling. Where does that, out of all the things that happened last year, where did that rank among kind of say, hey, I got to really get it together?
I really wish I was there. But like I said, it was a situation I moved on from, and I really can't wait for this year.
Do you think Jamar and Ortiz should be a captain this year?
100%. They feel like they should be. I feel like they should be as well. I feel like I should just do everything that I can control, and that's pretty much what I do. On the field and off the field. So I'm just trying my best to be the best player I can be. Just coming up with better habits, better routines, and just trying to stay consistent.
What's the biggest thing you've learned from Jamar in your time being around him?
Consistency. Consistency is key.
What's the one playbook-wise? How comfortable are you now versus even a month ago?
A lot more comfortable. I'm a lot more comfortable with my teammates. I've created, a lot of bonds and, relationships with these guys over the course of the offseason. Even coming back, whether it's going out to eat, chilling with them, playing the game, talking ball, in here laughing, joking, all rehabbing together. I feel like I've really got closer with the guys, and, I feel like we have a lot of great things in store.
What's the one thing you feel pressure to bounce back? Do you feel pressure? Do you think it's a pressure season?
No, sir. At the end of the day, I know my ability, and I know my potential, and I know what I need to do to to show it. So I'm doing all those things right now, and hopefully you guys will see it real soon.
So what's the one thing you learned last year? When you look back at last year, one thing, what was it?
I learned a lot of things last year, but you really got to be a professional in this league.
Is there a part of you that really wants to prove to people that what you showed last year isn't a true depiction of who you are?
Yeah, like I said, I really just look forward to this year. I know, last year, just another year, and I'm really focused on this year, focused on this team, focused on what I could do for them, and, focused on creating a better relationship with my guys, and, that's all I'm pretty much worried about, and I feel like things are going pretty good right now.
When we talked to you in preseason last year, you had the big game. You said you wanted to prove the Bengals right, why they drafted you. Do you kind of carry a similar mentality going into this year, showing, is there any similarity between what you wanted to prove last preseason and how you want to attack this year?
Yeah, mentality. Of course, I have the same mentality, but at the end of the day, actions over words. So I prefer to just keep working, keep my head down, and hope for the best.
Did last year Jermaine teach you that every snap in the NFL is earned?
Yeah, 100%. It really is.